They were ordinary women with simple lives, but at Stutthof, they became instruments of terror. In SS uniforms, they beat prisoners, forced women to strip in freezing cold, and singled out children for the gas chambers. When the war ended, they tried to vanish, but justice caught up. What happened to these female guards at Stutthof and why it happened became one of the most shocking moments in history. It started in 1941 when the demands of war were changing everything in Nazi Germany. Millions of men were fighting and dying on the Eastern Front, leaving huge gaps in every part of German society. The SS was struggling to find enough people to guard concentration camps, which were growing quickly as the Nazi regime rounded up more prisoners from occupied territories. So they began recruiting women to serve as camp guards. Until that point, these roles had almost always been held by men. This wasn't about fairness or gender equality. It was pure necessity. The women the SS targeted were young, usually between 18 and 30, and almost all came from regular working-class lives. They weren't trained soldiers or criminals. Before the war, they had been hairdressers, shop clerks, factory workers, or office assistants. Some had no steady work at all and were struggling just to get by in a wartime economy. For many of these women, the SS promised steady pay, guaranteed food, housing, and a uniform that carried status and authority. It was an offer of security and importance, and in a country where daily life had become unpredictable, that was hard to resist. Once recruited, the women were sent to Ravensbrück, a concentration camp south of Berlin that doubled as a training center for female guards. Ravensbrück was a place to reshape attitudes. The training combined classroom lessons and hands-on exercises under experienced SS overseers. Women learned camp rules, how to monitor prisoners for signs of disobedience or weakness, and how to enforce authority quickly and without compassion. Those who passed probation became official SS guards, called Aufseherinnen. The training wasn't just about rules, it was about mindset. Instructors hammered home the idea that prisoners were enemies of the state, inferior, and undeserving of sympathy. Violence was expected. Recruits were encouraged to use intimidation, threats, and physical punishment as routine tools. Acts of kindness were framed as weakness. Guards who followed orders without hesitation were praised, while those who hesitated or showed doubt were pressured to conform. After training, many women were sent to camps far from home. By late 1942, dozens were assigned to Stutthof concentration camp near Danzig, one of the largest and most notorious camps in the Nazi system. They arrived in full SS uniforms, with authority and responsibilities that included overseeing barracks, controlling food, assigning work, and meting out punishment. From the moment they stepped into Stutthof, these women became part of the machinery of oppression, shaping daily life through fear and authority. And very quickly, certain guards became widely feared inside Stutthof. One of them, Jenny van der Barkman, was born on May 30th, 1922 in Hamburg, Germany. She wasn't just another name on the long list of Stutthof guards. Her story stands out because she was so young, adapted quickly to camp life, and became shockingly cruel in a very short time. In 1944, she became an SS Aufseherin, a female camp guard at Stutthof. Even though she was barely in her early 20s, Barkman seemed completely at home in her role. Prisoners remembered her as bold and confident, someone who didn't wait for orders to punish. She beat women, sometimes to death, and her violence became part of her daily routine. Survivors also said she helped decide who would be sent to the gas chambers or execution areas, including women and children who were too weak or sick to work. Prisoners gave her a chilling nickname, the Beautiful Spectre. The name came from the shocking contrast between her young, normal-looking face and the cruelty she carried out. To inmates, seeing someone so young commit such terrible acts was deeply unsettling. What made Bachmann even more feared was how unpredictable she was. She didn't need a reason to strike. A prisoner could be walking perfectly in line, doing exactly what she was told, and suddenly Bachmann would lash out. No action was ever guaranteed to be safe. Calm moments could explode into punishment in seconds. Prisoners learned quickly that she could attack at any time, and this constant tension wore them down mentally and physically. As the war approached its end, Bachmann tried to escape when Soviet forces got close to Stutthof. In May 1945, she was captured at a railway station in Gdansk while attempting to flee. She was later brought to trial during the Stutthof trials of 1946, where she was judged alongside other camp staff. The court found her guilty of crimes against humanity, and she was sentenced to death. On July 4, 1946, Bachmann was publicly hanged on Biskupia Gorka Hill, near Gdansk. She was only 24 years old. Another guard, Gerda Stutthof, was born on January 29, 1922, in the free city of Danzig, a quiet place far removed from the horrors she would later become part of. She grew up living an ordinary life. As a young woman, she worked on a farm as a housemaid, helping with chores and daily tasks. Later, she moved into the city and found work in a bakery, kneading dough and serving customers. And eventually, she became a tram conductor, moving through the streets of Danzig every day, surrounded by people who lived ordinary lives like her own. But by 1944, when the Nazi regime needed more camp staff, ordinary women like Stutthof were recruited into the SS. She joined the camp at Stutthof, stepping from civilian life into one of the deadliest systems ever created. Unlike some guards who had years of experience inside the camp system, Stutthof arrived fresh from ordinary work, carrying nothing but her youth and a willingness to obey the SS orders. Once at Stutthof, her career moved quickly. On October 1, 1944, she was promoted to Blockleiterin, a block leader in the women's camp, known as SK3. This role gave her real power. She wasn't just patrolling the barracks or giving orders from a distance. She was involved in prisoner selections. When the SS decided who was strong enough to work and who would be sent to the gas chambers, Stutthof was one of the women trusted to make those decisions. Every choice she made could mean life or death, and prisoners quickly learned her decisions were final. Later that month, she moved up again, becoming an SS Oberaufseherin, a senior overseer. She was sent to the Danzig Home subcamp, and by December 1, 1944, she was reassigned to the Bromberg Ost women's subcamp, near Bydgoszcz, about 170 kilometers south of Gdansk. In this post, she gained even more authority over prisoners, controlling their forced labor, discipline, and daily survival. Her loyalty and service did not go unnoticed by the Nazis. On January 25, 1945, she received a medal, a recognition that the regime treated as a high honor for dedication to the SS cause. In their eyes, she was an efficient and committed part of the camp system. Inside the camp, Steinhoff's reputation grew fast. Survivors remembered her as ruthless, strict, and unyielding. She enforced punishment without hesitation, whether during roll calls, work assignments, or selections. While some guards acted violently in bursts of anger, Steinhoff's cruelty was systematic. She was part of the machinery of the camp, directing other guards and making decisions that directly affected who lived and who died. For prisoners, her presence was a constant warning. They learned that even small mistakes or signs of weakness could draw her attention and result in punishment. Steinhoff's role in the camp also made her highly visible. Her authority was recognized by both prisoners and fellow guards. During roll calls, she monitored every movement. During work, she decided who would endure harsher labor. During selections, she pointed out individuals for punishment or worse. Every time she appeared, prisoners knew that their survival depended on obedience, speed, and luck. Fear became part of the daily rhythm of life under her watch. When the war ended and Stutthof was liberated, Stutthof tried to disappear into civilian life. She fled from the camp hoping to escape justice, But survivors remembered her clearly, and authorities soon tracked her down. On May 25, 1945, Polish police arrested her. She was brought to trial during the first Stutthof proceedings in Gdansk, where she was convicted of crimes against humanity. The court specifically noted her role in prisoner selections and her cruel, sadistic treatment of inmates. She was sentenced to death. On July 4, 1946, Gerda Steinhoff was also publicly hanged on Biskupia Gorka Hill, alongside other SS personnel convicted of crimes at Stutthof. Elizabeth Becker was born on July 20, 1923, in Neuteich, a small town near Danzig. She grew up in a typical German family during a time when the Nazis were gaining power. As a teenager, she joined the League of German Girls, part of the Hitler Youth, where young women were taught loyalty to the regime and the importance of discipline. Becker's early life seemed ordinary. She went to school, worked simple jobs like cooking and helping in homes, and learned to live within the expectations of her society. But the war would soon push her into a world she could never have imagined from her quiet hometown. By 1944, Becker, just 21 years old, was recruited and sent to Stutthof on September 5th. She began training as an SS Aufseherin, a female overseer. This was her first step into the brutal system of the camps, where ordinary civilians were transformed into agents of terror. Training taught her to obey, to control prisoners, and to enforce rules without mercy. For Becker, it was a complete shift from her previous life, from a cook or household worker to a person with power over life and death. At Stutthof, Becker was assigned to SK3, the women's section of the camp, where she was directly involved in selecting prisoners. These selections were chilling. Guards like Becker decided who was strong enough to work and who would be sent to die. Women and children were pointed out, often silently, and taken away. Prisoners who were chosen rarely returned. In this way, Becker moved from ordinary guard duties into active participation in murder. Survivors later described how she carried out her work. She walked among prisoners, carefully observing each one. Anyone who seemed weak, exhausted, sick, or slow could be singled out for punishment. These moments were terrifying because no one could predict who Becker would choose. Her selections made fear a constant part of life in the camp, and prisoners quickly learned that even doing everything right was no guarantee of safety. Being marked by Becker often meant the end of life, and her authority was absolute. As the war turned against Germany and Soviet forces approached in early 1945, Becker tried to escape. On January 15th, she fled the camp and sought refuge with friends and family, hoping to blend back into civilian life. But she couldn't hide. On April 13, 1945, Polish authorities arrested her and placed her in custody to await trial. She had become a wanted woman, remembered vividly by those who had survived her selections and cruelty. During the Stutthof trials, Becker stood alongside other former SS women and male guards, all accused of crimes against humanity. She admitted to selecting at least 30 female prisoners for death, although she later tried to take back her confession. The court, however, had enough evidence to confirm that she had actively participated in the camp's system of murder and abuse. During the trial, Becker asked for mercy, claiming she had not been as cruel as some other guards. A panel of judges considered reducing her sentence to 15 years because she had served at Stutthof for a shorter time and was not viewed as the most brutal. But the Polish president rejected the recommendation, and her death sentence was upheld. On July 4, 1946, Elizabeth Becker, just 22 years old, was publicly hanged on Biskupia Gorga Hill in Gdansk, along with other convicted Stutthof personnel. Her execution was part of a larger reckoning with the women and men who had enforced the camp's terror. For survivors, her death symbolized justice for those she had sent to their deaths. Some more female guards include Eva Paradies and Van der Klaaf, who became feared inside Stutthof for a different kind of cruelty, one that didn't always need loud shouting or constant beatings to terrify prisoners. Eva Paradies was born on December 17, 1920, in Leborg, a small town that was part of Germany at the time. Like many young women of her generation, she was swept into the Nazi system and in 1944 joined the SS camp staff at Stutthof. She trained as an overseer and was quickly put to work inside the women's section of the camp, where she gained direct authority over prisoners. What made Paradias particularly frightening was how she used her position. She didn't have to strike in every moment. A simple look, a gesture, or a nod could mark a prisoner for punishment or even death. Survivors described instances where she forced women to strip in freezing winter weather, dousing them with ice-cold water. Any slight movement, hesitation, or shiver could result in a beating. This was carefully calculated to make prisoners feel helpless. They never knew why they were chosen, and the unpredictability made every day tense and terrifying. Paradias' role wasn't limited to isolated punishments. During the chaotic last months of the camp, she oversaw transports of women to satellite camps, where the same process of selection continued. Each move brought more suffering, more fear, and more death. When the Soviet army approached and the camp system began to collapse, Paradias tried to flee, but she was eventually captured. At her trial, evidence of her selections and abuse of prisoners led to a conviction for crimes against humanity. She was also publicly hanged on Biskupia Gorka Hill alongside other convicted Stutthof personnel. Wanda Klaff's story was similar, though her methods were slightly different. Born Wanda Kalaczynski in 1922 in Danzig, she had lived a simple life before the war, working in a jam factory, and later marrying and becoming a housewife. In 1944, she joined the SS staff at Stutthof, first working in the Proust subcamp, and later at Rusoschin. Her role was to oversee female prisoners, and like Paradias, she held the power to decide who would stay with the group and who would be singled out. She once admitted at her trial that she struck at least 2 prisoners every day, a casual confession that revealed how normalized violence had become for her. Klaff didn't need dramatic outbursts or shouting to enforce fear. Her quiet authority was enough. Prisoners who were weak, slow, or could not keep up during forced labor risked being pulled aside. Those chosen were often sent to harsher labor, solitary punishment, or execution sites. Other prisoners could only watch, silent and powerless, as friends or neighbors were taken away, sometimes never to return. Her presence alone created constant tension, because no one could predict who would be next. After the war, Klaff tried to hide in her parents' home, but was arrested on June 11, 1945. She was brought to trial with other former Stutthof guards, convicted of crimes against humanity, and was publicly hanged on Biskupia Gorka Hill in Gdansk, the same day as Paradias and the other female guards. For prisoners who survived, Paradias and Klaff were not passive instruments of the camp system. They were active participants in terror, choosing who would live and who would suffer. Their cruelty was defined not only by the punishments they carried out, but by the unpredictability of their decisions. Together, all these women represented different faces of the same system. Sudden violence, strict discipline, routine beatings, and silent selection all worked together. Inside Stutthof, prisoners understood that these guards did not just enforce rules. They controlled life, suffering, and disappearance. Poland chose public execution for a reason. Stutthof's crimes had terrorized civilians and prisoners openly. Justice, authorities believed, should also be seen openly. The executions were meant to be final. No secrecy, no disappearance, no denial. The world would see what accountability looked like. Each woman was led to the gallows one by one. The hangings were carried out by trained executioners. The process was filmed and photographed. There were no speeches, no ceremony, just the sentence carried out. The footage shocked audiences later because it contradicted the image of women as passive participants. These were not bystanders. They were convicted killers.